Morning, everybody, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Cory. I'm your host, Cory Smith, here to discuss some NC State football. NC State, obviously every team is trying to bolster their team as much as they possibly can through the transfer portal, but NC State has put a premium on trying to get players in the trenches, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football, and they've done a great job of that so far. I want to discuss, after I drink this swig of coffee, what they've been able to do in the first few days as far as the offensive line is concerned. Look, obviously, the focus is going to be trying to bring in some new faces along the offensive line, but bringing back guys like Teague Andersen, Spike Sowells were major pieces for NC State. You wanted to try to bring back, a guy like Jacarrius Peak, got priced out of that a little bit. So you go out and you go get a guy from ECU in Jimarion McCrimon, who I think is going to be a great player for NC State when it comes to the offensive line. Do I think he's going to be Jacarrius Peak right away? Probably not. But Jacarrius Peak wasn't Jacarrius Peak at the beginning of his career either. He came in for several years, was trying to push to get to that point. A great run blocker early on in his career, developed into a better pass blocker late. But undersized at that position. You bring in a guy like Jimarion McCrimon from ECU, who's still a bit of a raw prospect. 6'5", 325 pounds. So he's a big kid, or 312 pounds is what he's measured out at. But initially came up to ECU, spent multiple years pushing to become a starter. This past year was the full-time starter for them at the tackle position. He comes in. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, whether it's going to be him or Teague Andersen at left tackle. Do you slide Teague Andersen over to left tackle? And I'll give you reasons why I'm a little concerned about that, and why you still maybe want to bring in one more tackle to compete there, just because of some pass blocking issues between the two of them. But when you look at Jimarion McCrimon, he's a guy, I mentioned earlier, kind of a raw prospect, didn't really show his full potential while he was at ECU over the past couple of years, but still somebody that I think can develop into a better player. If you want to watch film, I mentioned it on the podcast last night, don't go watch what he did against NC State, because Kean Sloan, Sebastian Harsh, the way they played in that season opener, just otherworldly. They were really good in that game, and it ended up, he ended up kind of being the battering ram for them, and didn't really look great in that game. But the way he developed over the last, I think it was 8 games, I mentioned it, in a tweet or a post. In the last 8 games, according to Pro Football Focus, he allowed just 7 total pressures. So 7 total pressures over 8 games. You'll take that any day of the week. You look back at last year, I believe it was, Teague Andersen, we'll talk about here in just a second, but Jacarrius Peak, all last season allowed 13 total pressures, 3 total sacks. When you look back at what Jimarion McCrimon did this past season, now, albeit against different competition, obviously, he's not facing consistent ACC competition. You're facing AAC competition last year, but he allowed a total of 3 or 4 sacks on the entire season. And like I said, 7 total pressures over the last 8 games. So you saw him get better. You saw him develop. He's got, better size than what you got from Jacarrius Peak, but I just don't think the intangibles are there yet for him. There's just a nasty streak that Jacarrius Peak plays with that I don't know that you were going to find in the transfer portal this season. But NC State was able to improve a little bit this past season down the stretch. Of course, my dog is barking now, so I appreciate that. But when you look at what they're trying to bolster here, getting a guy like that, and also adding Teague Andersen to it. I love the, bringing back Teague Andersen. The concern I mentioned earlier, if we're talking about the pressure rate, we're talking about the sacks allowed this past season. He only allowed 1 sack, but did allow 26 total pressures. That's double what Jacarrius Peak allowed this past season. So, and again, he was playing at the right tackle position. So you're playing on the side where obviously, CJ Bailey, when he's dropping back, he's able to see that pressure coming. If you've got a guy allowing 26 total pressures along the left side, that's a little bit different story. So will he stick at right tackle? Will he move over to the left tackle? We'll see. But he was a guy that was graded out as the best offensive linemen when it comes to run blocking this past season. Again, that's huge at the right tackle position. That's also huge. Spike Sowells, the guy that graded out number 2 overall on the team when it comes to run blocking this past season. So getting the 2 of them back, and Spike Sowells moving over to more of his true position. He was brought into NC State as a top 100 center in the entire country, or a top 100 player, but was a top one, I believe a top 5 center going back to the 24/7 Sports rankings. So again, you're getting, high level guy moving over to the center position, again, moving over to the true center position, and does have some snaps in the past, albeit in practice and spring camp with CJ Bailey. So there's plenty of experience there. There's plenty of, knowledge between the 2 of them and chemistry going into this upcoming season. So I do feel like there's a chance for him to level up in a major way playing at the center position. You're able to bring both of them back. And again, I mentioned Teague Andersen from the run blocking standpoint. What you're getting from him is so valuable going into next year. And again, a guy like you're bringing in Jimarion McCrimon at the tackle position. He was also a good run blocker this past season, somebody that can step up in a major way and get better there. Now, he played left tackle. Does he come over to NC State and play that tackle position too? That's something that I think is going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of months, because you saw Teague Andersen, even while he was at Utah State, played mostly right tackle. They're also looking at another guy in Junior Sia too that they're recruiting that they might be trying to bring in at the tackle position too. Does that ultimately lead to him be able to try to be able to bring some experience there? The 2 of them playing maybe opposite of each other, with McCrimon being not a rotational player, but can be somebody that can play multiple positions too. He is 6'6", but at the same time, somebody that can move around a little bit along the offensive line. You have multiple players at those different positions that you could slide around. And, one other guy that I'll mention too, we haven't talked a lot about him. I've talked about him on multiple podcasts whenever we discuss these types of things. But again, I don't want people to forget about Rico Jackson and what he was able to do this past season. He was a very versatile piece for NC State. So being able to retain him, which it sounds like they will, I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a big announcement for him like you've gotten with Spike Sowells and Teague Andersen, who are 2 starters for NC State. But Rico Jackson, a guy that filled in admirably multiple times this past season, when you had guys like Teague Andersen go down, when you had guards go down and you needed them to fill that spot, you do have him coming back next season to be able to fill multiple spots for NC State. So that would be huge if you're able to retain him. But again, looking across the board right now for NC State, you still would like to get some more guards. You still like to maybe add 1 or 2 more, just given the fact that you need some depth. You need, a high-level starter at the left guard position if you're going to keep Rico Jackson at the right guard when you slide Spike Sowells over. Kamen Smith, also a guy that they're looking to retain too. So we'll see ultimately where all those guys fit in, but you still need to go out and go get at least another guard or 2 to be able to feel comfortable about where this offensive line is. But I can't overstate enough. We're going to talk about all of the, the next few months. We're going to talk about, all of the players they're going to bring in from a skill position standpoint. We're going to talk about some defensive players, which sounds like NC State more than likely will add a defensive player once he announces either today or in the coming, hours. I would say at least in the next 24 hours, could be talking about it here very soon. We'll see. But they're still trying to add a lot on the defensive side of the football. We'll talk about all those guys, but I don't want to forget about the players you're retaining too, because getting guys like Teague Andersen, Spike Sowells back are major for NC State. And again, both 2 guys that, if you look at the PFF rankings this past season, Teague Andersen, a 69.1, had a 68 run blocking grade, which I said was the tops among all offensive linemen for NC State, 67.5 in pass blocking. So that does have to go up significantly. But, run blocking grades are always a little bit lower than pass blocking. Spike Sowells, another major piece. So the 2 of them graded out nearly the same this past season. So what do you get year 2 of both of them in the program? How much can they develop? How much can they grow? And then how much more are you able to be able to add through the transfer portal? Are you able to go out there and get, a run blocking guy like Cody Hardy that you had this past season? Are you able to go get another move tight end? They've had a couple in so far, but are they able to bring any of those guys in? So we'll see over the next few weeks, as NC State continues to be able to add through the transfer portal, how they fill out, the players around these guys. But man, what they're doing along the offensive line, being able to bring in a guy like Jimarion McCrimon, who's, going to be considerably less money than what you needed to be able to get Jacarrius Peak, and being able to retain guys like Teague Andersen, Spike Sowells, is massive for what they want to be able to do on the offensive side of the football. It's something they've said they wanted to prioritize. We mentioned it multiple times on the podcast, on our boards, what they want to be able to do and who they want to be able to add. And the trenches were important for NC State. Now it's about getting a couple more on the offensive line and being able to add more through the defensive line too. So thank you to everybody for listening to another edition of Coffee with Cory. We will talk much more about NC State in the portal. We'll have Michael back on probably on Wednesday. We'll talk about, over on the boards, over on the site, about everything that's happening with basketball too. Obviously, NC State a late tip tonight in Conti Forum out in Boston College. We'll have coverage from all of that. So thank you again to everybody for listening. We will talk to you again soon.